Anyway, so let's just start with so again, as we did last week, there'll be quite a few PowerPoints. It's really good to, I mean, I think the PowerPoints are helpful, yeah, because it helps you to write down, and it's another way to try and hold it in the mind, when you have the visual, something visual. It certainly helps me as well when I'm listening to teachings to have PowerPoints, to keep my mind focused. So we will go through PowerPoints, but to begin with, we're going to do about 10, 15 minutes of meditation on what we discussed last week, mainly around the qualities of the Buddha, why Buddha is a reliable refuge. So just a little bit of analysis, thinking, contemplating what we did last week. So let's just go into a meditation position that's comfortable for you. Maybe a couple of, just a minute, just being on either with the breath or the sensation of the sit bones on the cushion, just to ground our energy a little bit more in the body. In that space, just taking a moment to connect with your own intention, motivation for coming to the class. What pops up more immediately in your own mind is your motivation. So again, just a short reflection on the qualities of the Buddha that we discussed last week. So why do we study the qualities of the Buddha? Well, if we want to achieve anything in life, whether we want to be a doctor, a musician, an artist, I mean, there's no question we develop a sort of interest after thinking about the qualities of being an artist, what that would mean, what we could do as a doctor, what the life would be, how skilled we would be as a musician. We have an attraction towards that, an aspiration, and then if we have a conviction, then we go about training to be one of these things, something in life. We've all completed some kind of training for a skill in this life. So similarly, we're talking about becoming a Buddha. The qualities that we want to develop in our mind, on the basis of having what we call Buddha nature, Buddha potential. So really, we understand on some level now we have this potential, but, really we don't have a great idea of what this means, what the result can be when we really start to develop more and more deeply this potential. So that's why we need to study the qualities of a Buddha, our future Buddhahood, what it would look like. And we need to realize right now that the outer Buddha is a reliable refuge for us right now, where we're practicing on the path, a reliable teacher or guide. So just touching on a couple of the qualities that we discussed last week, that the Buddha has this total fearlessness. So if we check up right now, if we're really honest with ourselves, we have levels of fear in our lives. Probably the biggest one is a kind of fear of death, which in many cases it's a valid fear because we're going into the unknown. We don't have control of the process. We don't know where our consciousness is going to go necessarily. And just on a day-to-day level, there's levels of fear going on in our mind all the time because we're disconnected with reality, with the ultimate truth. So remembering the story of the Buddha, the one I mentioned last week, when Devadatta, his jealous cousin, and a king conspired to try and kill the Buddha. So this is when the Buddha was alive, He was on an alms round, and they set a wild elephant, an elephant that they had intoxicated on the Buddha. So it raced towards the Buddha, but due to the power of the Buddha's fearlessness, his skill, his compassion, the elephant, just reaching his presence, became completely tamed. Even though it was intoxicated, the Buddha was able to stay still, and he knew exactly what to do. Just the presence was able to tame the elephant in the spot. And there's many great stories of holy beings. I mentioned St. Francis of Assisi. He was able to tame a wild wolf that was attacking a village. He went up and communicated with the wolf and was able to tame him on the spot, and sort of make an agreement with the wolf not to, frighten the villagers, attack them. So beings who have bodhicitta have this type of fearlessness, and it's a truth. It's not a blind fearlessness. It's one that's based on skill, wisdom, and compassion. So how wonderful it would be if we were able to develop that fearlessness, just like the Buddha. Similarly, as we saw in the story of another monk called Sudapantika, he was very dim-witted, again alive at the time of the Buddha, and no one else was really able to help the monk because he couldn't read well, he couldn't listen well, he wasn't able to hold very much to memory. So it was difficult to teach him. But again, the Buddha has this skill of being able to guide students exactly according to their capacity, their level of mind. So he gave him the task of sweeping the temple and reciting, getting rid of the dust, and I get rid of my impurities. So he swept and he said, as I sweep the dust, I sweep away my impurities, my negativities. And again, due to the power of that practice, over some time, he was able to recognize the nature of his delusion, the nature of attachment in his mind, and free himself from samsara in that life, achieve arhatship. So when we read these stories, one of the main ways to develop an admiration for the Buddha, the first level of faith, is really reading about the stories of how the Buddha guided others, how he manifested, or his life stories, how he helped others through different lifetimes. And by doing that, we also think how wonderful it would be if I can achieve those kind of qualities, just like the Buddha. So in that way, some sort of faith, devotion, inspiration starts to awaken towards the Buddha. And at the same time, we create a lot of merit and goodness in our own mind through rejoicing and having a level of attraction and conviction in the qualities of the Buddha and our ability to eventually, slowly, through the developing of our mind, achieve those states. It's possible because we have Buddha nature. So before we recite the refuge prayer, generally we do that before practices, before teachings, it behooves us to think about some of these qualities that we may have read of the Buddha, even just one of these qualities like fearlessness, undiscriminating compassion towards all sentient beings. Even the word Sangye we see here in Tibetan, the Tibetan word for Buddha, Sang means totally purified. Means like all the dust on the mirror of the mind, you know. Often there's an analogy like garlic. We put garlic in a container. So when you take out the garlic, there's still a smelly garlic, yeah? So that's what we call the sort of subtle obscurations that are similar in our mind, you know. But even a Buddha has, like, his mind is even free from that smell of the garlic, you know, that subtle stain of the garlic. So it's completely clean. The container of his mind is completely purified, like a mirror. And then Gye, the second part of Sangye, means fully developed, like that lotus, you know, a lotus is fully open. The mind's fully developed in all the realizations and all the qualities. So as we chant the refuge prayer, we try to think of really taking refuge in that the outer Buddha, fully purified, fully developed mind, and also my own potential to become Buddha, my Buddha nature, for that to blossom and open with all these beautiful qualities of fearlessness, compassion, and you know, wisdom, skill to benefit infinite sentient beings. As we chant refuge, we imagine all sentient beings around us. We're all gathered together as we are in the class right now. There's all of us here. Then all our mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, even if they're in the future life now, you know, for some of us, our parents might be in the future life. But anyway, we bring them with us, you know, their continuity consciousness, all taking refuge together, all kind of celebrating and having this wish to achieve all the qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind within our own heart and mind. And we do this not just for ourselves, but so we can also benefit sentient beings. All those we imagine around us, friends, family, community, as vast as space, that much we develop our mind, that much more we can benefit others. So we recite once in Tibetan, twice in English, while just feeling the presence of Shakyamuni Buddha in the space before us, seated on this fragrant lotus and moon cushion. Again, the lotus showing that full opening of his mind, you know, the full development of all the qualities. The golden body signifying the richness of the Buddha's realizations. And then we recite again a few of the mantra, just visualizing lighting nectar, purifying and receiving, purifying our mind, receiving all the Buddha's qualities. Sangye chodan sogi chognamla chanchu bardu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chinso gebe sonamge rola penjir sangye druparsho. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Tayada o mune mune maha munaye soha. Tayada o mune mune maha munaye soha. Tayada o mune mune maha munaye soha. Tayara o 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 mune Mahamunaye Soha. Okay. Okay. It's quite hot here. Get dehydrated, we're all drinking. I'm sure it's very hot there as well. And for those of you who are in Santa Fe, yeah. Hot all over mostly. Okay, so last week, did I go over the qualities of the Buddha's speech? Does anyone remember? I couldn't quite remember where I finished off. Does anyone quite remember if we touched on the qualities of the Buddha's speech? Robert, you got some notes there yet?
No, I'm sorry. I have a dog next to me crying.
Oh, I thought
Oh,
you were looking at your notes.
no,
Kevin?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get him outside my room. So sorry.
Oh, no worries. Anyone else? Any hands there? No worries. We will start with the qualities of the Buddha's speech. I think I maybe started on it, but we can go over. Looking familiar, this PowerPoint. Anyway, so last week, so what are we trying to achieve here? When we study Buddhism, when we practice Buddhism, the ultimate goal is to achieve the qualities of the Buddha's body, the qualities of the Buddha's speech, and the qualities of the Buddha's mind. So they all have very distinct qualities. And that's kind of what we want to progress towards that. We want to develop gradually these qualities in our mind. So the more we're clear on the qualities, even when we look, we remember, as I say, when we go into enter a temple, excuse me, we see a statue of a Buddha. Lama Zopa Rinpoche always encouraged us to always try and put our palms together. Those you see me on the top screen there, yeah? Putting our palms together, and thinking about, as we did in the meditation, one of the qualities that we bring to mind of the Buddha. So I think we all appreciate the compassion of the Buddha. We all know the Buddha was a compassionate being, but you can study even more specifically in the life stories how vast, how deep, how incredible his compassion and bodhicitta was. So, and so also, if we know the qualities of the Buddha's speech, particularly, we can think about that, because compassion is more the mind aspect of the Buddha. But the speech of the Buddha has these incredible qualities as well. As Lama Yeshe says, it's the experience of luminous, penetrating wisdom that gives us the Buddha's speech its power. Even one word can satisfy the needs of many different beings. So they have this kind of very strong power of communication. Like, as I think I mentioned, I think maybe I did touch on it last week, like we see His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I mean, I used to say I could say the same words, but it's not going to have near the power because I don't have the inner qualities that come behind it. I haven't developed all the qualities of speech that these great holy beings have. So it's not necessarily in the speech itself what they say, it's because the speaker has this wisdom, embodies the truth. They have all the qualities of realization. So that's what brings mainly the power of speech, isn't it? When somebody's realized, when that becomes someone's truth, when they speak, it has a great power. One senior nun told me in the early days when she used to listen to Lama Zopa Rinpoche, she always felt like Rinpoche was speaking directly to her. She used to think, Rinpoche's just talking to me. I don't know what everybody else is getting here. She really felt like Rinpoche was just focused on her. And that's another quality of the speech, that the qualities of Buddha's speech can satisfy the minds of many, many diverse beings at the same time. So many beings can be sitting in the audience and they all feel like their needs, their answers are being fulfilled through the qualities of the Buddha's speech, So it has that simultaneous effect on many, many beings at the same time. So you feel like, and it's so powerful, you feel like you're being spoken to directly, in that moment, even though there's hundreds or maybe thousands of people there. And especially it's advised that if you're in teachings to kind of, even if you can't see the teacher as the Buddha, but to try and feel like the Buddha's at least communicating to me through this being. As a student, if you can feel that, have that kind of faith, devotion, awareness, you will get more from that teaching. And it's likely that the Buddha will somehow communicate through that being, In some ways, like we're all pores, many of us who are students for many years of Lama Zopa Rinpoche always say we're like pores of the guru, we're maybe not, certainly myself, not a high level guru, but I try to think at least I'm some sort of pour, try to communicate what these beings have communicated to me, you know? So hopefully it benefits others. Sorry, I have to put the light on here again. I always, I didn't do this last week and it's getting dark. I need to do it again. Here we go. And the other way that, holy beings can communicate through hand gestures, through eye glances, it's not just through the speech. I mean, that's the main way. And for us, that's the main way we receive the teachings. But they can also like communicate us on many different levels. Just a glance from a holy being can be very powerful, you know. Either they're happy or not happy sometimes, you know. So they have even their body movements, everything can be a teaching in a way, you know. But the main way we do benefit is through the power of the Buddha's speech. And the more we have an openness and a devotion, some level of faith, some sort of attraction, inspiration towards that teacher, the more we're going to benefit, right? The more we're going to hear and digest those teachings. One time, I as well had another friend who was teaching His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And, you know, there's thousands of people there in India. I think she was in India and they put up these huge tents, you know. And so she ended up behind a pillar. So she couldn't see His Holiness. I mean, of course, everybody wants to see the teacher, especially His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So she was like, somehow that's the seat she ended up with because there's so many people there and she was behind. So one day, you know, she said it was, and this kind of made it for her, even though it was like so many days behind the pillar. One day, His Holiness literally, you know, if you, I don't want to lose, but he went like this to the side. And so I, you know, looked at her and waved. He moved so that she could see him and he waved at her, you know, and she just said, that was it for me. I was okay being behind the pillar for the rest of the teachings, you know. So, you know, that's the thing. I mean, just being in the presence, hearing the holy speech, it gives a lot of happiness, you know, a lot of joy. And actually, the Buddha's speech, which we're not going to go into all the qualities now, but it actually has 64 melodious qualities. But, you know, some of them are like the teaching goes straight to your mind, straight to your heart. It's perfectly correct. There's no mistakes, clear, harmonious to your mind, you know, it fits with your mind. It encourages you. It's pleasing to hear, and it tames our mind, you know. So many beings, when at the time of the Buddha, when the Buddha taught, you know, his first 5 disciples, when he first taught the Four Noble Truths, he went from, after he achieved enlightenment, he went to find the previous ascetic practitioners that he was practicing with, asceticism with. So they became his first disciples. So he walked to where they were practicing and he taught the Four Noble Truths. And at least, if not all of them, they all achieved some level of realization just from that first teaching. Of course, they had a huge amount of merit, but it's combined with the power of the Buddha's speech, you know, the power of the Buddha's realization. And the other thing is, I mean, just from my experience, when you go to teachings with holy beings, you get kind of refreshed and energized in their presence. The speech energizes you. It makes you happy. You know, it really, I mean, again, if you're there in the right mind, you can achieve deep insights being in the presence of teachers, you know, just by hearing the teachings. Another quality of the Buddha's speech is that it can be understood, especially like from the side of a Buddha, in whatever language one understands. So at the time, another time when the Buddha was teaching in India, he taught in a place called Rajgriha, which is not far outside where the Buddha achieved enlightenment in Bodh Gaya. And he taught the Prajnaparamita, 3 versions, the long, the medium, and the brief. So there's like 100,000 verses, I think 80,000 and 20,000 verses or something like that. And he taught them simultaneously due to the different faculties of the disciples who were there and needed to hear them. And of course, there wasn't just humans there was gods and spirits and nagas and many other level of beings who could benefit for those teachings. But he was able to teach them all simultaneously at the same time, the Prajnaparamita. So like that, he can teach and satisfy the minds of many beings simultaneously. And also, you know, for an example, with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, he, for many years, he would manifest having many texts on, and he could teach from many scriptures and texts, very complex ones at the same time. And again, that was probably satisfying the diverse needs of the beings who would come and see His Holiness, because, there's all level of beings and practitioners that come to see His Holiness, but somehow they, just being in the Dalai Lama's presence, everybody seems to get something according to their level of, skill and ability or experience, the level of their mind. So even with His Holiness, very high level lamas come, and then many, many beginners to the same teaching. But still, they all receive something, otherwise they wouldn't be there. I mean, of course, it's being in the holy presence, but it's also due to the power of speech, and it's this skill, this level in mind to reach so many, many beings. Okay. So the qualities of the Buddha's speech is that, we've done that one, sorry. Next slide. Should all the sentient beings of the world ask him all at once to resolve their doubts, he would, in front of all of them at one time with one speech and using his one body, perform the deed of resolving their misconceptions. So again, that's the kind of, as I was mentioning, one of the qualities of enlightened, the Buddha's speech, being able to do that. So next, again, we're just touching on these qualities. You can study them more deeply in the traditional Lam Rim texts, for sure, but we're just getting a sense of like what that, what the speech can do. And because the speech is so powerful, even for us, and for us to develop the power of speech, I think I mentioned that Lama Zopa Rinpoche has a daily practice that he likes the students to do called blessing the speech. To purify our speech, because we lose a lot through our speech. We can create a lot of negative karma through our speech, even just through idle gossip, a lot of gossiping, chit chat, that's not really beneficial, we can lose the power of our speech. And then also to help empower our speech, not just for this life, for future life. So our speech can benefit others now and in the future, we develop more, because that's the main way we really benefit people is through our speech, as does the Buddha through his speech. So now we're just going to take a quick look at the good qualities of the Buddha's mind. So here I've just got a picture of the vast open sky, because it's not possible to have a picture of the Buddha's mind, So qualities of the Buddha's mind, for example, what kind of qualities would you think that the Buddha's mind has? What do we know about? Anybody want to space? Oh yeah, Barbara, you have your hand up, great.
His mind, or the Buddha mind, a Buddha mind, is all-knowing.
Yes. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? What else do you understand by all-knowing?
It knows the minds of all other beings.
Yeah.
And so being fearless, having a mind that's fearless and all-knowing, he can impact them or benefit them with those two qualities.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Yeah. Anything else? Any other qualities the Buddha's mind has? What's the other aspect? All-knowing is the wisdom side. What's the other aspect that the Buddha has? When we say fearlessness.
Compassion.
Clear.
Compassion.
Oh, yep, compassion. Someone else spoke there?
I did.
Zila.
Clear?
Well, it's certainly clear, it's completely, as we said, it's completely purified at all the faults, So our mind, yes, it's true, like a mirror. And you're also right, Barbara, compassion, yeah, fully develop compassion, which means that, we're like, well, I like this one, I don't know if I like that one. And, we still have a kind of uneven mind, even though, some of us have been practicing for some time, but we still like have our, well, he's a nice person and he's okay. And, but I like this, it's like we don't have equanimity, is what I'm saying, So the Buddha has developed, he's a doctor. The best way to always remember, he's like a doctor for the mind, like the mind, as you're saying, Zayla, has the mind for complete clarity, all-knowing clarity, to know all phenomena, as you're saying, Barbara, all beings in the minds, simultaneously, the level, capacities, abilities, the thoughts, the motivations, very deeply all beings' minds. That's what Buddha mind is, I mean, my example with Lama Zopa Rinpoche is that Rinpoche knew me better than myself. And I'm not in a good way, I mean, Rinpoche kind of knew what my sort of potentials were, that I didn't know, because we all come into this life. It's like you want to be a dance, anything, a swimmer, a dancer, an ice skater. We have a certain potential. We might not all be Olympic. We're not all going to reach there. Even if we go into that, that sport, or we go into music or go into art, we may not all have a potential. We'll all have a potential to go so far this life, yeah? So similarly, most of us may not achieve enlightenment in this life, sorry to say, but but it doesn't mean that we can't make some good progress. But for a holy being, for the Buddhas, they can see what your potential is, how that's going to play out, how many lifetimes it's going to take, and they're with us there 100%. For a holy being, for a Buddha, for a high-level bodhisattva Buddha, they are with us 100%. As long as we're there too and following the advice, because they know our motivations, our previous karmas, what our imprints and what's the view of our mind, what kind of imprints, karma we have for past life, and how can they help us to purify the faults, the immediate ones, and sort of keep developing the qualities that we've already developed in past life so we don't lose them. And that's what any skillful teacher would do, they'd see your level, where you're at, They might have a bunch of people in a class and like, well, I know this one's not going to make the Olympics, but you could make some other kind of competition, So you're going to get them to that level. They're going to be able to develop this level of skill, at least. And we're talking about just this life. Of course, the Buddha can see that all beings can achieve enlightenment, but it's not going to happen necessarily in 1 or 2 lives, So they guide you according to your capability, life by life, So that's the quality of Buddha, and they have, because of their compassion for us. I mean, once we are liberated for cyclic existence, you already have a level of compassion for others who are still in it. It's like once you free yourself of cancer, if you have cancer, you get cancer. Some of us may have cancer or something serious. Once you go through all that, you feel compassion for others who have it because you've been through it. So once we go through our samsara, we get out of that. There's no question that you have compassion for others. Even arhats, they may not have developed the motivation, the bodhisattva vow, to benefit, to kind of liberate all other beings. They haven't developed this bodhicitta motivation, but they still have a great compassion for other beings because they can see we're still in it, we have to get out. They see our pain. They see our turbulence, our confusion, So once you're out of that, you already have a level of compassion. But then the Buddha develops it fully through the practice of bodhicitta, through the practice of the 6 perfections. So then they're completely qualified to be able to benefit, doesn't matter which sentient being it is, how difficult that being is, how sad that being is, the Buddha will continue as long as we are there, that being is there. So the qualities of Buddha mind's like that, it's all knowing. It pervades all phenomena, just like the sky. There's nowhere we can go right now that we don't see the sky in this world, So similarly, there's no place that you can't go to, no phenomena where the Buddha's mind doesn't pervade. It's omniscient, all-knowing, all-pervasive, as Barbara was saying. So the other aspect of the Buddha's mind it's also can be very inspiring is that he knows the subtleties of karma. We've done some of the karma modules, so it's difficult for us to see our own karma. Yeah, we just have a lot. We don't. We know some of our karma. We can look back on our life and say, oh yeah, this happened and that happened, and then we once understand karma. But what's our future karma looking like? What can happen in the future? What's karmic imprints do we still have in our mind? Why do problems arise for us? Where do they come from? So the Buddha can see all the subtleties of karma. And one example was one story from, again, a sutra at the time of the Buddha. One woman came to him grieving because her child had died. And so she begged the Buddha to bring her child. She actually came with her child and she was, please, can you bring my child back to life? I mean, the Buddha had many miraculous powers, But at that time, instead, so of course the Buddha didn't do that for her. Instead, he told her, and instead of kind of teaching her about impermanence and how all beings, are under the control of impermanence, we can die at any moment. He sent her out to collect mustard seeds from a household. He just asked her to go out to collect a mustard seed from a house, find a household where no one's died, and collect mustard seeds. You know the story, Space? So she went from house to house, yeah, but she couldn't find anybody where there hadn't been someone in that household, or they knew of someone who had passed away. So she came back with no mustard seeds. But what she realized was in that process that it's part of, this is what happens. We know we die. She realized the sort of universality of death. She realized death and impermanence, that all beings are affected by death. This is what happens in life, so that's what struck her. And then he also explained to her in that time that it was a ripening of a previous cause. In a distant life, she had caused the death of another's child in some far distant life. So, and because that karma wasn't purified, she received the result of her child dying in this life. So there's a huge amount of instances where the Buddha would explain to people, and of course it's out of great compassion. It's not like, well, you were really bad and you did this in your past life. I mean, that's often how it can be presented, karma in the West, kind of like, well, you did this, so you deserve it. It's like, no, it's just explaining why things are happening to you. So the Buddha, with his omniscient mind, can explain, well, this happened because, you did these things. He can see so many lives back. They even arhats, a being who's achieved liberation for samsara, even some levels of bodhisattvas, they cannot see all the subtleties of karma. So a Buddha can see everything, all at the one time, all beings' karma. Similarly, story like this 80-year-old who wanted to become a monk at the time of the Buddha. I don't know if you know this one, Space. He wanted to become a monk, so he went to, this one, Space? Probably somewhere there, yeah? He wanted to become a monk, and he, so at the time, pardon, someone else knows it?
How do you?
Someone's jumping in here. They want to explain it?
No,
They-
I had to mute somebody.
Oh, okay. So at the time, there's another story that Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to tell a lot. One 80-year-old man wanted to become a monk. So he approached the monastery. Again, it was when the Buddha was alive. He approached the monastery where one of the Buddha's main disciples, Shariputra, was the abbot. And he requested permission, but Shariputra thought, well, he couldn't see that he had any karma to be a monk. He also said, probably because of his age, or anyway, he made some reasons why he thought he couldn't be a monk. But at that time, the Buddha would often just appear, So the Buddha appeared, and it said that actually he could become a monk because he had some karma for that the Shariputra couldn't see, even though Shariputra was like an arhat, high level being. He couldn't see all the subtleties of that man's karma, and the Buddha said he did have the karma to be a monk because in many eons past, he flew around a stupa. He was a fly. Following the smell of dung, like cow droppings. And he went all the way around the stupa, circumambulated it to find that dung, And even though he didn't have the tension to go around, there was no noble cause apart from he wanted to smell the dung. This is another example of the power of holy objects that Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to talk about constantly, how important holy objects are, how much they can benefit our mind. Because he created an imprint on his mind from that created the cause for this was ripening now for him to become a monk. So it was way back in his consciousness, but the Buddha could see that. And actually that monk developed realizations. He became a monk and he developed realizations in that life. There's another part of the story, but I won't tell it now, but he did become a holy being in that, an arhat in that life. So this is another quality, a very important quality of the Buddha's mind, seeing all the subtleties of karma. And of course, it knows the two natures of all things, the conventional nature of phenomena and the ultimate nature of phenomena, the ultimate nature being that everything is empty or void of true nature. You know, so that's how he can guide us. He can see our ordinary day-to-day mind, you know, our conventional, what our the conventional reality is in all beings' mind, how we perceive phenomena, sort of day-to-day things. He sees the conventional view, and he also sees the ultimate nature of all phenomena. So again, these are sort of more deeper topics, what's conventional and ultimate reality. But just in a nutshell, that's what the quality Buddha mind is, being able to see how things seem to exist to us, but they don't actually exist like that. But conventionally, we still need to agree conventionally on how things exist. And that brings us to ultimate nature. You know, so the Buddha can see both simultaneously, conventional and ultimate nature. And again, even at the level of an arhat or bodhisattva, they're not able to experience these simultaneously. So that's just dropping a little bit on the qualities of the Buddha's mind, the qualities of the Buddha in terms of the wisdom aspect. And then the other aspect is, of course, the compassionate aspect, the method aspect. He has pure, undeclining, fully developed love for all sentient beings, as I mentioned before, a deep sensitivity to the suffering of all sentient beings and its causes. You know, so then based on that, he knows how to remove the causes of all sentient beings suffering. The other aspect, you know, that brings, so what do these two bring? You know, like when you have fully developed compassion and fully developed wisdom, well, the other aspect it brings is an incredible joy, you know. So compassion is actually very joyous, even though you feel all beings sufferings, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, like is the Buddha compassion, you know, he's regarded as that as in the Tibetan community by all Tibetans and many Western Buddhist practitioners. You know, but His Holiness has incredible joy, you know, all the time. He has, you know, when people are around him, they feel he's compassionate and completely sincere, but he's filled with incredible joy as well, you know. So that's one aspect, like the Buddha has this unceasing joy and bliss all the time. And when, you know, when you're around holy beings, there's a happiness that you feel, you know, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, even like, you know, when you're around maybe a congregation of Sangha, you know, because of their level of practice, you feel a happiness being in their presence, you know, because what are we trying to achieve here? We're trying to achieve happiness. It's just our minds, our confused minds that blocking the happiness. It's the delusions that block the happiness because the nature of the mind is pure joy and pure happiness. So these two qualities together, the result of these two qualities, the more we develop the method side of the path, compassion, the wisdom side of the path, the you know, nature of understanding nature of phenomena, that much more joy we start to have. It's just natural because the natural quality is we remove the dust for the mirror, these obscurations for the mind, more joy comes because that's its nature. It's just choked right now with the delusions. We're sort of knotted up with the wrong view of self. We're knotted up with a wrong way how we grasp at our own self-cherishing. It's not that we're bad. We just misunderstand reality. We misunderstand how we actually exist. And that causes the joy to be, you know, blocked at times. It's not that we don't have happiness from time to time, but unceasing, never-ending joy, maybe not. You know, so and it's not based on any external, it's not based on others, it's not based on external phenomena where I got something, or it's just by itself self-manifest. You know, self-manifesting joy, compassion, and wisdom all the time, unceasing. So wouldn't that be amazing? And when you're around someone like that, you instantaneously feel that, you know, you feel that. I mean, when I was around Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you just like, there's this bliss going on all the time, you know, there's just bliss and happiness. I mean, there was also difficulty because I still had my own delusions. So and you still have to work with them, and the job of the guru is to work with your ego stuff. So they have to pull your junk out, you know. So that can be a bit of a painful process at times, but you still feel this level of bliss and happiness that's going on for their side all the time. There's one story, David Lynch. Some of you might have heard he was, I don't know if is he still alive? I think maybe he passed away. Passed away, yeah. So one friend told me she was a fan of David Lynch, and the last time I taught this topic, she told me a story about David Lynch. So I thought, oh, this is quite a nice story to tell as well for the Refuge module. So he's director of Twin Peaks, and he passed away when I think, yeah, not too long ago. He was asked during an interview, have you ever had an experience you would wish that would go on forever? And he replied that one day when he was in LA, he was visiting a museum with his family. And there was this part of the museum that had like Buddha images and relics and statues from India. So he wandered off on his own and went down this kind of long corridor. And at the end of the corridor was this huge, large Buddha statue. And he said all of a sudden, there was all these rays of light emanating from it. And he got filled with incredible joy. I mean, that's incredible karma, you know. And he wasn't a Buddhist. He was actually a transcendental meditation practitioner. I mean, he didn't call himself a Buddhist, let's say that, you know. And he said it went on for hours. And he wished that that experience would last forever. So that's because of some sort of good karma or merit. Maybe he had a karmic connection with that statue in the past. Maybe he was in India. I'm sure the statue probably came from India and Nepal. You know, it was an ancient statue. And somehow maybe who knows, maybe he built it, who knows? But he had some karma with that particular image and statue that caused him to like see lights coming from it and to get filled with joy. And he said that's what he wished that would go on forever. So that is, you know, he got a taste of some experience to some level what Buddhas experience, you know, everlasting joy. And it seems like he was quite a compassionate being as well, because he also shared a story that one day at his house, he had a lot of ants and that some of his family wanted to kill them. But he said, no, 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 we just need to give them another job. So he built a small structure of cheese in the garden. So they all moved out there. Very skillful, you know. So I think it's very similar. So yeah, that's a beautiful story, you know, because many beings would just, you know, unless you've heard teachings of Buddha or teachings on compassion, equanimity towards all being, might just kill them, you know. But he, you know, generally had obviously had quite a deep practice, you know. So he built this something for them so they would move out there and they would enjoy out there instead. And, you know, just another example of the, you know, the compassion of the Buddhas. Or the kind of real deep practice of bodhicitta, the bodhisattvas. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, there's at least 2 or 3 students, I think, who had the experience of being around Lama Zopa Rinpoche, a little bit more in the early days when Rinpoche was spending a lot of his time in India and Nepal. And it was also like, maybe like more like 70s, 80s. So things were a wee bit more simple at that time as well. And I think Rinpoche had been moving around and they ended up staying one night in a hotel. And, you know, at that time, or it was probably a guest house or something. So at that time, you go into your room and there was mosquito nets, you know, you had to put your mosquito net on. So one student, it was actually Roger, but I think there's at least 2. Venerable Roger is Rinpoche's attendant. So Venerable Roger told this story, and I heard another student tell a similar story. He was with Rinpoche. So that I think usually Venerable Roger and Rinpoche would have separate rooms, but I think they arrived at the monastery or the guest house very late, so they had to share a room. So Rinpoche, you know, Roger said he was really exhausted, so he was needing to get off to bed. You know, he wanted to sleep, even though he was able to live off a very little sleep. But he said, you know, he kind of, you know, prostrated to Rinpoche, and you know Rinpoche wasn't going to sleep, you know, so but he put the mosquito net over Rinpoche, and then he kind of just said I had to sort of slip off to sleep, so he just tried to have a few hours of sleep. But somehow he woke up at some part of the night, and he looked over, and Rinpoche had taken the mosquito net off, and he had all these mosquitoes on his back, you know. So Rinpoche was actually purposely feeding the mosquitoes, you know. So that's a couple of times I heard Rinpoche do that, you know. And Roger just said Rinpoche's back was full, you know, mosquitoes, and Rinpoche was all I'm sure very happily offering. So this is the result of you know, if I get one mosquito, I'm like, maybe a lot, you know. Shall I let them eat, you know? But can you imagine many on the back? I mean, that's not easy. But so this is the kind of quality that high-level bodhisattvas, Buddhas have, you know? I mean, of course, the mind's developed, so they feel happy to give. They feel happy to offer that. And that's one thing with compassion, you know? We shouldn't give when we later feel a sense of loss. We shouldn't push ourselves to the point of benefiting others, and then we feel like, oh, I'm so tired and I wish I hadn't done that and do. So again, it's a level where we have to develop our mind in incredible joyous effort to benefit others, you know, as part of the sixth perfection practice. But and eventually, like a Buddha, like a high-level bodhisattva, you're just enjoying benefiting beings all the time, because the mind's totally developed in that. So again, it's just sharing a little bit of the, you know, some stories of what our mind can do, you know, when it's developed in these qualities. Let me just share the PowerPoint again. Share. So the next one is, so yeah, that's just a little bit the body, the speech, the Buddha, the mind of the Buddha. And then there's another aspect that the Buddha has is the qualities, the enlightened activities. And of course, this is an image of Tara, because who's Tara? Who is Tara? Anyone? She's the embodiment of all the activities. You know, we see Medicine Buddha, we see Tara, we see Chenrezig, we see all these deities, yeah? So because the Buddha has so many qualities, you know, as I say, 64 qualities of speech, all these qualities of enlightened mind, all the qualities of the body, you know, it's very hard to encapsulate that in one image of the Buddha, you know, when you think about it. So many of these deities, you know, are what we call aspects of the Buddha's different qualities. You know, like the healing Buddha embodies the Buddha's quality to heal, and also very powerful for people when they pass away, to protect at the death time. Very powerful for fulfilling our prayers and wishes. Tara here, her quality is kind of embodying. Oh, I have a misspelling there. Embodying the qualities of the Buddha's activities, and I guess it's very much like you could say female energy, yeah. Female energy is kind of tends to like to do many things at the one time, can be more like that. So in some level, that's why you could say it's a feminine aspect, because she's embodying the qualities of enlightened, all the different activities that the Buddha's mind embodies. So for you know, the word karma, you know, so karma means action. You know, so we create actions with our body, speech, and mind all the time. Yeah, that's karma. Tibetan word is le, L-E, le. So similarly, the Buddhas don't create karma anymore because they're not under the control of delusion, you know, so they don't create contaminated actions. But the Buddha has enlightened activity, enlightened actions, which don't produce suffering and confusion, but just produce joy, happiness, and perfection for himself and others, themselves and others. The body, speech, and the mind of the Buddha are constantly acting for the welfare of sentient beings. It's spontaneous and directed towards every living being. And it very much fulfills the needs, the specific needs of all beings at all times. You know, depending on that need of that being, that Buddha will manifest actions, activity. So often we pray to Tara, you know, she's just embodied because she's an embodiment of the Buddha's actions to help us with projects, when we've got obstacles, when we've got fears. That's the kind of quality Tara practice, you know, to help us to fulfill, to be successful in whatever, especially virtuous activities we want to do. Tara helps our actions to be more virtuous, to be more successful, to be more beneficial for other beings. And the other aspect of the Buddha's mind, these activities, is because he's gone beyond laziness or discouragement. They don't get discouraged. It's just, doesn't matter how challenging a sentient being might be to tame, you know, there's no level of discouragement. And I often saw that was the case with Lama Zopa Rinpoche. I mean, Rinpoche ran an organization with, 160 centers, services, and projects, worldwide, international. Can you imagine? If you've been, you know what it's like. We've all worked in a job, there's always politics in any workplace, in any family. There's a level of politics, yeah, a level of challenge and difficulty. As long as we're in samsara, there's levels of challenge and difficulty, yeah. So never mind running an organization with 160 centers, services, and projects. With, how many directors, how many students. So there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be stuff. But, at that level, or we see the level of His Holiness Dalai Lama, I mean, he's been working continuously for the freedom, or at least some autonomy, political or religious autonomy in Tibet. But they don't get discouraged by, problems, by hardships. The more bodhicitta you have, the more goodness you have. Actually, there's a quote, I don't think I put it down here, but I think when I read recently one place where His Holiness said that, I get more happy the more problems there are. Now, it's not that he's happy because there's problems, but there's a joy that comes in being able to try to help others in that space, whereas we can get overwhelmed, discouraged, So this is the quality. This is like when you've got enlightened activity, it just goes on and on and on, it's endless. And it very much is able to suit the needs and abilities of the different sentient beings. It's like Buddha mind is keeping track of us all the time and manifests whatever we need at certain times. So I'm sure we've all had moments where we feel like maybe something serendipitous, is that the word you use? Or you feel like, oh, I think I'm being helped here. Yeah. I'm being guided here. Maybe we used to call it the universe. But when you take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, you receive this kind of protection, this kind of guidance, moment by moment, if we're open and aware, Like, similar to like the story of Sangha. Anyone familiar with the story of a Sangha who was making prayers? This was a great hermit. He was a scholar and hermit around about, I think, the 2nd, 3rd century. And he was making prayers. He went off to do retreat in a cave at that time because he wanted to have a vision of Maitreya, Buddha, the future Buddha, and receive teachings from him. Does anyone remember that? Anyone heard that story? Kevin's like, Zila. Yeah, she's got her hand up. Jayla, you want to share it?
I don't know if I'll say it right.
It doesn't matter. You just say, you just do what you know.
So Asanga was trying to he went to this this cave way up in the mountains, way up, really high up, and he wanted Maitreya to appear to him. He wanted to, and so he prayed he prayed and he stayed in meditation for 3 years, and he was getting really frustrated that Maitreya wasn't showing up. He was like, this guy is a jerk. So he's like, I'm out of here. So he walks down the mountain, and as he's going, he notices, I want to say he notices a smooth part in the rock where, am I saying this right?
Yes, yeah.
Smooth part in the rock where, I want to say the wind had been brushing over it over and over and over and smoothing out the...
Almost there, Sheila. So there was a man there, and he
Okay.
was like rubbing the rock with a feather. Yeah. And then the man said, and so Asanga was like, well, why are you rubbing the rock with a feather? He says, well, I'm trying to make a needle. And he's like, well, if you can have all the patience and perseverance to do that, surely I can go back to my cave and, keep meditating on Maitreya. I can go back. If you've got, I mean, that's a worldly activity. And, I'm trying to develop these realizations. So surely I can go back and keep trying. So, yeah. Any more, Sheila, with that one? So that's one part. Yeah.
The dropping, I'll need help with this. The dropping of the water, was it making a hole?
Yeah, there was another story. There's a
Oh,
couple of different
was that?
versions of it, but yeah, there was another one where, he came down. Basically, he came down on 2 or 3 occasions, and he saw these kind of people doing these really unusual things. Like I think there was something in front of someone's window, and they were like rubbing away to try and get rid of the rock in front of the window. And I think there's another one where they were dropping. There was like drops falling on the rock and they were hoping it was going to rub away on the rock. It was just these crazy things, that 2 or 3 times he came down and people were doing. And he's like, well, if they can do that for something like just trying to get a little bit sunlight in your window, surely I can go, I can meditate. So he did this 3 times, seeing these different beings manifesting different things, just to try and keep it short because it goes on for a while. So what happened at the end then? What was the last thing he saw, Sheila? Do you remember when he came down? After 12 years, he says, okay, I'm done.
He's
I still
frustrated.
haven't had any view of Maitreya. I don't think it's going to happen. So he came down and he was really at that point finished. So what happened then, Sheila?
And he sees a dog, and this dog is just in a terrible shape. He has open wounds and he has maggots on him, and he thinks, I need to do something, for this being. And so he thinks, okay, so if I try and pick the maggots off with my fingertips, it'll take the maggot away from the dog, but I'll probably squish the maggot. And so he just keeps going over and over and over in his mind, trying to figure out how he's going to get these maggots off of out of the dog's wound. And finally, he comes to the realization that the only way he's going to be able to get the maggots off is with his mouth. And so he sticks out his tongue and he's going to remove the maggots with his mouth. And that's when, but I've also heard another story. So there is another story. And that's when Maitreya appears to him and he goes, where have you been? Big jerk.
So why did Maitreya appear to him at that time?
Because he was doing the most foul thing ever. If you guys think about it, taking a maggot off of an animal's wounds, that's pretty foul. He was doing the most foul thing just to help another living being, just to make this dog a little bit more easy. And that's
So it was basically because of the power of his compassion for the dog, yeah? So in that moment, he had so much compassion, as you're saying, Zayla, for the dog that he did something like we couldn't imagine to do, but he didn't want to harm the maggots. So he wanted to take them out with his tongue to be really gentle. It was the only way. And due to that compassion he felt for the dog and the maggots at that time, he purified his mind so much that then a Maitreya appeared to him. The dog transformed into Maitreya. And he was like, so where have you been, And he says, well, I was here all the time. I was up in your cave, but you didn't have the karma to see me. And this is what I mentioned last week a little bit, if we backtrack, about the different levels of the Buddha's manifestation. There's grosser and subtle levels of manifestation of the Buddha. There's the Dharmakaya body that only the Buddhas can see. And then there's these form bodies, Sambhogakaya, Namanakaya, and only at a certain level of mental development, when our mind's more fully developed, can we see those bodies. So I think Maitreya, I need to check, I think he appeared to him in a sort of type of Nirmanakaya that was still quite subtle. So when So he said, actually a Sangha didn't believe him at that time. He's not, but and he said, no, I was up in your cave. And he said, look, because, a Sangha must have been like, cleaning his mouth or something and spitting in the corner of the cave. I don't know what. And he said, look, you spat on me. I was sitting in the corner of your cave and he had these like spit marks on his robes, Maitreya, he said, So then he went down to the village with Maitreya Buddha on his back and he says, I don't believe you. I'm sure everybody can see you. So he went down and he was going through the village and saying, look, here's Maitreya Buddha. And nobody saw anyone. Everybody thought a Sangha was crazy. Apart from one lady, she saw the dog. But even the people could see the dog, because the dog was still a manifestation of Maitreya. So again, this is like just showing like how the Buddha can manifest according to our karma, our level of karma. The activities of the Buddha and the power of compassion to purify the mind. Thank you, Sheila. Well done, because there's a lot of parts to that story. Okay, so that's just again touching on some of the enlightened activities of the Buddhas, how they manifest in different forms for us. So we're going to cover now, hopefully get to this by the end of the class, the qualities. So what do we take refuge in? We take refuge in the Buddha. When we say the prayer, the Dharma teachings. So when we say, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, so we looked already at some of the qualities of the Buddha, the Dharma. Now we're looking at the Dharma jewel, because there's 3 jewels, 3 things we need to take refuge in, rely on, lean on, absorb into our being, when we on the path to enlightenment, we need to rely on them. So the second one is the Dharma jewel. The Dharma jewel, there's 2 levels, conventional, which are all the scriptures, the teachings, what we're doing right now, and the ultimate, the true paths and the true cessations. So the relative jewel really is like when the Buddha was alive, he taught, does anyone know how many thousands teachings the Buddha gave when he was alive?
84,000?
Yes. Someone?
84,000?
Yes, well done. Is that you, Zayla? Yeah. 84,000 sets of teaching. So could you imagine us trying to get through those? I mean, it's enough to try and get through a course of discovering Buddhism, yeah? So anyway, 3 baskets of teachings, 3 main baskets. Some always put into the Vinaya basket on moral conduct, sutra teachings, and Abhidharma, commentaries on the Dharma teachings and philosophies. So basically, when we take refuge in the Dharma, we are taking refuge in all those teachings that the Buddha gave, What is the Dharma jewel? The conventional Dharma jewel is anything that, so the meaning of Dharma, another meaning of Dharma, what it means is to hold. So the Dharma holds us up from suffering. So actually, when we take refuge in the Dharma, it's any teaching, anything that protects or holds us up, lifts us up from suffering. That's really what Dharma is when we take refuge in Dharma. So we can find Dharma teachings in some cases in many ways, but the main thing is the Dharma needs to be an antidote to our delusions, the opposite of attachment, the opposite of anger, something that heals anger, something that subdues attachment, something that chips away at the self-grasping, the wrong view of self, something that chips away at our pride. That's what it needs to be medicine for that. So that much more we recognize that we understand how the delusions are operating and creating this difficulty in our mind, creating a rock-like mind, that much more we'll understand what is Dharma. We'll see Dharma in other teachings as well. But right now, mostly we're taking refuge in the Buddha Dharma here, how the Buddha Dharma is presented. But of course, there's Dharma in other religions and philosophies as well. But as a Buddhist, we mainly want to practice, the Dharma teachings here, what the Buddha taught. And, but we're so fortunate, right? Because the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago. But now, over the centuries, we've had many great masters who have kind of distilled these teachings for us so that we don't have to sit and work out How do we wrap our minds around 3 baskets of teachings, 84,000 sets of teachings? You know, for us, we're so fortunate. I mean, we have the Lam Rim here. This is the graduated path to enlightenment distilled into one package for us, you know, from beginning to end. Put together by Joe Atisha, an 11th century great Pandit, you know. So we're very, very fortunate to have these here because there's no way we could work around 84,000. Most of us wouldn't be able to do that. So that the conventional Dharma teaching is that, you know, any Dharma, any teaching, you know, all the sets of teachings that remove our suffering and help us to develop our enlightened quality. The qualities of bodhicitta, wisdom realizing emptiness. The Dharma jewel is the actual or practical refuge for us in our current state, since it includes the teachings and realizations that we need to cultivate in our minds in order to attain the ultimate goal of Buddhahood. It's the main medicine is the Dharma. So it's like, again, the Buddha's like the doctor, skilled doctor, physician. The Dharma's the medicine that we need to take for the delusions. And the Sangha are the, you know, like the nurses, the spiritual community that are not fully developed, but have skills and abilities to help and guide and nurture us along the path. The qualities of the Dharma jewel are countless. The Buddha jewel itself arises from the realization of the Dharma jewel. By realizing the Dharma jewel ourselves, we can attain Buddhahood. So as we progress along the path, that much more we practice the Dharma, we practice the teachings, that much more, of course, our practice of refuge becomes deeper and more profound because we're ingesting the medicine of the Dharma. So in the Mahayana teachings, the wisdom realizing emptiness, you know, the wisdom aspect of the Buddha's teachings, this direct realization of emptiness is often called the mother of the Buddhas. Because every Buddha achieves enlightenment on the basis of realizing emptiness. And since a mother is the giver of life, wisdom is often portrayed in a female aspect like it is here, Prajnaparamita, wisdom mother sutras, is portrayed in that aspect because it's like this, it's wisdom that gives birth to Buddhahood. So of course, we need to develop compassion. We need to develop, you know, more and more compassion for sentient beings, but without understanding deeply the suffering in the minds, we can have compassion. More, of course, we can understand physically when people are starving and hungry and sick and, you know, have health problems. Even we can have compassion for people who have mental anxiety, depression, you know, that's more easy to understand, but to have a deep understanding at one's own samsara. Without that, we won't have full compassion for ourselves and for others. And then, based on that compassion, when we have that compassion for ourselves, that combined with the actual antidote to samsara, wisdom realizing emptiness, that's when we start to give birth gradually to the higher qualities of bodhicitta and Buddhahood. So it's really actually in many ways it's the wisdom realizing emptiness that, you know, once we have that, the wisdom teaching very clear, even a conventional sort of conceptual understanding of that, we already can start to have quite a lot of compassion for other beings because we see how they're trapped in the confusion of the wrong view self. This is what's the really unique quality of the Buddha Dharma, you know, these wisdom teachings. Really trying to get a clear understanding of the nature of mind, the nature of self, the nature of I. It's not that we don't exist at all, but we don't exist in any way how we think, how it appears to our mind right now. And that's the basic confusion we're all under the control of. That much more we see our own confusion, that much more our compassion for others is much more fully and deeply developed. So next slide. Okay, so that Dharma jewel, you know, that's the Dharma jewel, the qualities of the Dharma, all the different all the medicine. The medicine for the mind, all the 84,000 sets of teachings, along with the ultimate Dharma, is the realizations that then develop in our mental continuum once we've digested the Buddha, the teachings. So there's a conventional and ultimate aspect. Similarly, Sangha, there's a conventional Sangha jewel and ultimate Dharma jewel. Conventional being 4 or more ordained monastics, fully ordained monastics. Ultimate being the true paths and true cessations in the continuum. Sorry, 1 second. So, so the Tibetans, when we say the conventional Sangha, the Tibetans, their translation of Sangha is Gen Dun, G-E-N-D-U-N, for anyone who's writing any notes. So Gen actually means something like constructive, and Dun means intent. So what does Sangha mean? I mean, you can say it's a community that lives and joins together and practices, but more specifically, it's a community that's intent on a very constructive purpose. And that purpose or goal is liberation and enlightenment. So that's what Sangha is. It's a community who are invested in that. And, the Buddha's vision was to have a sort of fourfold community, a fourfold Sangha made up of fully ordained monks, fully ordained nuns, so monastics, and both male and female lay precept holders. So of course you've got monks and nuns, but you also have the male and lay female precept holders. Like some of you yourself, you've taken refuge and you may, or if you do, you may take some precepts, like no killing, no stealing, no lying, the lay precepts. So you would also be part of that sort of conventional Sangha community. And he felt like this community would allow him to really, we need the Sangha to help relieve the suffering of sentient beings. And the Sangha naturally grow when there's a holy being, then a community naturally develops around holy beings or saints, as it did at the time of the Buddha. It's almost like the Buddha's the brightest star, and the Sangha members are all the surrounding stars, and they also connect and they contribute to the brilliance of the Buddha as well. The Buddha needed the Sangha at that time, to spread the word. Or each individual in the Sangha is like a branch connected to the central trunk. The Buddha and the teachings to each other, they share the same nourishment and support one another. As I have I have a nice image of the Sangha. This is a retreat with Lama Zopa Rinpoche about 15 years ago. So when we rely on the Sangha jewel, we can be assured that our application of the Dharma will lead to the results that we seek. You rely on the Sangha to help you with your progression along the path. And for many of us, of course, these days we don't have direct access to the Buddha. We do have, fortunately, many holy beings, who embody the qualities, very similar qualities to the Buddha. But, we don't always have access to them either, So the Sangha, this fourfold community, we need that very much, to support us. And we see that. That's why we have Lama Zopa Rinpoche and our organisation developed so many centres, because we need that in our healing process. Even if you're even for those who have been maybe addicted to, alcoholics, and you want to get off the alcohol, what do? You go to community groups, and you have to do that all your life because it's not easy to stay off that. So we're addicted to samsara, yeah? We're addicted to the wrong view of self. We're addicted to our delusions, they're tight, they're clingy, they're not easy. They're rock light in the mind. So we need these three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We need a community to support and nurture and discuss, and ideally people as well who have at least progressed a little bit further than we have in the path, so they can guide us in the right way. The qualities of the Sangha jewel are inconceivable and limitless. The Sangha jewel themselves have necessarily achieved realization of the Dharma jewel. The Sangha jewel themselves have also necessarily attained exalted qualities. So again, there's different levels of Sangha. There's ordinary Sangha. I'm fit into the ordinary Sangha. But, there's also exalted Sangha. Like Sangha also comes, under that also comes like arhats, bodhisattvas, you know, so they're not Buddhas yet, but they do have qualities and realizations. So we reflect on that. We reflect on, when we do the Sangha practice, how much the Sangha benefit us, because even the, you know, the fourfold community and monastics and lay practitioners, how they have certain qualities, but especially the qualities that are inherent in, like, maybe bodhisattvas. They're not Buddhas yet, but they're very well advanced on the path. Arhats, who have maybe achieved liberation for cyclic existence, they're not Buddhas yet, but they're very advanced in the path. So that's the kind of ultimate Sangha jewel. Those who have a level of realization, they're not quite Buddha yet, so they're still classified at the level of Sangha. But they're more developed than us. Again, if you go to a group, a support group, there'll be people in there who have been doing it for years. So they're going to be more developed than you are right now, you know? So you want to rely on them. You want to lean on their expertise, their quality that they've already developed. So it's very, in that level, it's very practical. We need all three. Okay, so how are we doing with all that so far? Something in the chat? I know it's quite a lot of information. I just learned, somebody said, I just learned that in Spanish, remedios means healing, help, or solutions, which means like Dharma. Okay, right, yeah. Medicine, yeah. So it's actually quite interesting what Dharma, this other connotation of Dharma I find, to holding us up from suffering. It's actually a direct meaning of the Dharma, to hold up. Does anyone have any questions, other comments they want to share with that material so far? So let's just take a moment to, what I want us to do just for the last 5 minutes or so, just taking a quiet moment to think about maybe one or two of the qualities we discussed there that you find quite inspiring. And try and hold that in your mind for a moment. Sometimes we find the wisdom side more inspiring than the compassion side, you know, the Buddha's qualities. Sometimes some of the stories inspire us, like Asanga or the one who did the sweeping. How the Buddha was so skillful to guide him. And then based on that, whatever inspired you, just think how wonderful it would be if I was able to develop that quality. And then perhaps what level of commitment does it mean for you to maybe start working on that particular quality in the Buddha's body, you know, through the Buddha's body or speech or mind, activities. Or maybe it's a quality in the Sangha or the Dharma jewel that's more inspiring. So maybe, you know, as we come out of that, just is there something particular, a particular quality somebody might like to share or story that you found particularly inspiring of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind activity, or one of the stories? Do we remember? I might pick on someone. Freddie, yeah, there we go. Joey, great, yeah.
I think the fearlessness is, oh, fearlessness is an incredible aspiration because there is so much out there that we can fear, and we're given that information constantly about things that are scary. And so just to aspire to even working to reduce that
Mhm,
fearfulness,
mhm,
is just, I just think that's an amazing thing to aspire to.
mhm. Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else?
Can I show you a picture of Asanga's mountain?
Yes. Oh, great. Oh, wow. Is this in Indonesia by any chance, or is it in?
This
Can't remember.
is in India.
It's
this
in
is-
India, yeah. Oh,
There's the top.
oh, so this cave was somewhere there, yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And this is what was at the top.
Oh, so you went there, yeah?
Mhm.
Which part of India is it, Zela?
Did a pilgrimage with Roots in Bodh Gaya.
Oh, yes, yes. And you went to Asanga's cave.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Anyone else? Robert. I'm going to pick on someone.
Yeah, that's fine. No, what keeps hitting me back is it was actually happened today. I was reading stuff I hadn't read for a year, and I think it was the Daily Lamas, Lumrim.
Yes.
It had different meaning. Before it worked really well, but now reading it again, it has I don't know, more advanced. It's just more broader. The
Mhm.
words don't sound as simple. There's more words and meanings behind it.
More depth.
A lot more depth to it.
That's good. That means you purified a little bit. That can be one of the results of, like, listening to teachings, purifying the mind, getting more inspiration and aspiration, towards the teachings. Then the mind goes a bit deeper into the teachings. So that's a good sign. So it was more, so you find it more sort of juicy, more impact on your mind like that, yeah? Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I'm just shocked because there was probably some bias too, because I'm like, oh, these are simple words. They don't have that meaning. But coming back a year later and having a year and a half exposure to this program,
Mm-hmm.
definitely, yes, definitely juicier.
Okay, good. What about Matt? Any of these qualities of the Buddha or stories that you find kind of more and quite inspiring? Or maybe none? You're out in space there, Matt, so
Please don't put me on the spot.
you'd rather not?
I'd rather not.
Okay. Hera, have you been coming to all the classes, or you have, yeah? I think maybe I didn't see you on the screen every time. Hera, or maybe it's not easy. Maybe it's not easy for you to your Zoom connect.
Sorry, I
Hera?
got the wrong thing.
Okay.
No, I've been trying, we've been trying to catch up.
Okay.
So you haven't been seeing me. But I'm grateful to be here tonight.
Okay, well, welcome. Yeah. It's quite hard to make it every night. Is there any particular story there or, quality that you found maybe a wee bit more kind of inspiring?
Well, I'm inspired by the aspiration to perfect the quality of pure speech, because it's such a difficult it's a very difficult thing in the world to be able to get your point across, to articulate, to affect people in the way that you mean to, with everyone's interpretations and swirling around, and meanings are often misinterpreted, misconstrued. The delusion is so vast and powerful. People are so powerfully adrift in their delusion. So
Yeah.
it's become a really strong aspiration of mine to speak very mindfully, very meaningfully, and clearly, because that's such a huge thing. So
Yeah, and it's, I guess that's all you can do is in this, I mean, especially with what's going on in the world right now, all we can do is really offer our own heartfelt practice, really, because everything's just so crazy. A little bit, I don't mean to really laugh,
Right.
but it's heavy, there's a lot of heavy things. So it's almost like Buddhism becomes, spiritual practice becomes so important in these times, because really it's just up to us on an individual level. We can't do much on a big level, but day to day, person to person, we can do a lot, in the community. So this is why it becomes so important to understand how much, and to make our speech more powerful, or at least to not harm, And that's a tenet from all the religions, just wear speech in the beginning, not to harm. That's a big one. So, it said there's a saying that I don't remember which Lama, but it says when you're on your own, no, when you're on your own, be mindful of your thoughts, I think Space, you probably know this one. And when you're with others, you have to watch your speech. Something like that. I'm not quite getting it right, but it's basically correct, So as a practitioner, even when we're on our own, we think, oh, I can just space out, nobody's seeing me. But, really for a practitioner, we want to be watching what's going on in our minds, not just letting them take off here, there, this, that, in every direction that's not useful. So in retreat especially, as an inner being, someone who's taking refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha, inner being, we want to always try and watch what's going on with your thoughts. Are they in a space of harm? Are they in a space of delusion? Or are they generally, in a good space, in a kind, loving space? At least that. And especially with our speech, to really watch our speech when we're with others. That's what you need to be mindful of. As you're saying, Hera, we have to really watch our speech, even if we're not helping a lot, but we're not harming. Creating the habit of not harming with our speech is like huge. And this is why Lama Zopa Rinpoche, as I mentioned, gave this morning practice of blessing the speech. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but you can find it on the FPMT because, so much, we lose so much through our speech, and also not just that. So it can purifies your speech. And also if you keep doing it every day, when you speak to others through the power of the syllables and the mantras, the visualization, our speech can actually purify others through the power of these mantras over time if you keep doing the practice. So it starts to make our speech meaningful, for others and give it more power eventually. Okay, so I think we are at the end tonight. There's still a little bit more to cover. So hopefully we will maybe see some of you for the practice day on August 23rd, even if you can only come for part of it. So the schedule's like 9 till 2 Santa Fe time. And we probably do about 2.5 hours with a couple of breaks. Then we have an hour break for lunch. And then we'll do about an hour and a half. So it'll probably be something like 9 to 11:30 with 1 or 2 breaks. And then from 12:30 till 2. And it'll consist of a couple of meditations and then a little bit of the end of the topic, the 8 benefits of taking refuge, along with the refuge commitments, and then another meditation to finish at the end. So it'll be a mixture of teaching with a little bit meditation, mostly meditation with a little bit teaching just to finish the material, because we missed a week during the auspicious day, and I probably needed that actually to finish the material. So yeah, hopefully we'll see some of you. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending, and hopefully we'll meet some of you in person at some point. And yeah, I think
Venerable,
that's
I just
yeah.
put a link to Venerable Robina's doing blessing of the speech. It's
Okay.
30 minutes. When she comes to visit, she does this. So I just put that in.
Wonderful, great. Yeah, it's a good
Okay,
practice.
people. So, all right.
Oh, I heard her voice there. I think it played, yeah, somewhere there.
Okay. So just get a
Oh, somehow she's popping in there, Venerable Rubina. The other thing is, if you would like to do a short assessment, I won't ask you to put up hands now. I don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe you can contact Venerable Dundrup, the SPC. Do you want to put the SPC at TNA? Put that up as well. So if you'd like to do a short assessment, and again, it's really just for help. It helps you to go over the materials again. It's not like, oh, you're going to fail, because I don't think any of you are going in for the whole. I don't think anyone here is trying to complete the course in any way, to become a teacher. It sounds like you're all going through the first round here, just on a level of participation at the level of the teaching. But it's helpful can be helpful to do the short assessment, even if you have your books there. It just helps you just go over the material one more time, So I'm happy to do that with you, if you're interested. So contact Venerable Dundrup at SPC at TNLSF if you'd like to do the assessment. Okay, so I'm just going to put up a couple of dedication prayers. We'll finish with dedication.
I think that is the Barbara that we met. So her hair is shorter or something.
Right. So let's just dedicate, as I was talking about in terms of the Buddha's quality, the main one, the most precious one is bodhicitta. So on the basis of good heart, more loving kindness, may we all develop and may it increase more and more our good heart, our aspirations, inspiration to develop bodhicitta, the awakening mind that's able to benefit infinite sentient beings. It's also conjoined with wisdom. May this ripen in my heart and the hearts of all sentient beings, especially the political leaders, especially those who have any kind of power, not just political power, like in famous people, may they use their fame to benefit others. Whatever ability we have, may we just be always guided by bodhicitta and benefiting others. Chanju Senju Rinpoche Mage Panam Gegurshi Geba Nyamba Meba Yi Gonne Gondu Pelwar Shok. May the precious view of emptiness not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline but increase more and more. For His Holiness's long life. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And I just want to dedicate also for Lama Zopa Rinpoche's swift return, to come back into this world as quickly as possible. Well, Rinpoche's already back in Nepal, but for the unmistaken incarnation to be recognised at the right time and of all the auspicious and good causes and conditions to become a great master and guide for us in the FPMT organisation again. And for each one of us to have a karmic connection with Rinpoche, as we do now, just by attending these teachings, being connected to Thupten Norbaling. We already have a karmic connection. We continue to be connected to holy beings, That's what we need to develop our mind, great teachers, guides, examples in the teachings. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation, and enjoy the rest of your week.